3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Been an interesting week politically. Of course, we were just talking to Kimberly about the Balsams bailout. We had some issues with a national committeeman who got busted attending an AFP Action Fund fundraiser.
Although we have reason to believe the
Planned
establishment,
Parenthood.
the establishment probably wouldn't be too keen on establishment Republicans attending AFP meetings.
That's true. They probably wouldn't.
But that wasn't the point.
No, I've got AFP on the brain because I've got AFP in this segment. I've got AFP in that segment. Brent Gardner will be joining us to talk about the Ex-Im Bank. In the next segment, we've got Greg Moore, and we've invited him in for this segment to talk about all things politics in New Hampshire, and there's tons of things to talk about, and we don't have to linger on anything in particular. But
I would hope that if folks want to show up at an AFP event, they wouldn't catch too much heck.
No.
From the right, from the left, I assume they probably.
I would think that if Kathy Sullivan, for example,
I'll invite her. I mean, it's funny.
Came and donated to
Kathy
American
Sullivan really has a lot of fun commenting on my Twitter posts. And it's just kind of interesting, and she has it in conversational tone, despite the fact that I've never met her in my life. Mm-hmm. I've never met Kathy Sullivan in my life, and yet she keeps this sort of conversational tone on Twitter. It's like, this is an interesting person.
Well, that's fine.
That's fine.
And that's the famous Shrill Kathy of the Shrill Kathy Chronicles, right?
That's right. And
I wouldn't know. I've never met her.
I have been kind of hot and cold on Twitter this week. This is the first year I've had allergies really affect me in a long time because I smoked for 10 years, but I haven't smoked for almost 20 now, and my allergies are just beginning to come back because I used to have them, but smoking had made them go away. And this year in particular, because the pollen is so bad, I was actually having issues, so I started taking a generic version of Claritin, which turned me into a walking zombie for 3 or 4 days till I stopped taking it. The first day, there was no symptoms, and I felt fine. The second day, I began to feel like I was in a haze. And the third day, I actually didn't go to work because I had no energy. I was completely exhausted. It just took me down like, bam! And I was like, oh, my God, I got to stop taking this stuff. So I did. Much better now. Yeah. But, so I know that people have been harassing me on the blog, and people have been harassing me on Twitter, and I haven't had a chance to respond to you, and I apologize for the delay.
Well, that's all right.
We will get to you.
I see that Skip took up his lightsaber, which he borrowed from Monday.
We've had plenty of backup. So.
Yeah, to joust with Brian Gould on your behalf.
Yes. And Brian, I just posted a notice, man. Get over it. So, Greg.
So I think it's interesting. I know the biggest news story for many people around here has been the Wells report and the Deflategate from a football perspective. But the biggest news politically, I think, happened on Thursday with the UK's election, where they had the election, and as Mike showed, and has a great picture, and apparently the map is turning into Maggie Simpson. That's pretty much what the UK map looks like.
So we have to hold this one up. You hold that. I'll switch to cameras. Yeah. So on the left, the UK electoral map, and on the right, Maggie Simpson. What the colours mean? First of all, you have to know in Britain that royal blue is the colour of Conservatives, as dressed by Maggie Thatcher. And you can see they pretty much wipe the map everywhere south of Hadrian's Wall.
Which is England.
Which is where the Romans tried to saw off Scotland from England because of the savages that lived up there.
My ancestors, by the way.
That's fine. The yellow part is the Scottish Nationalist Party. The Labour Party totally screwed up by appeasing the Scots, offering them all kinds of devolved powers and eventual separation and a referendum. The referendum failed, but the Scottish Nationalists succeeded. When the election came, the Labour Party...
They didn't secede, but they succeeded.
They certainly did. When the election came, the Labour Party was the first up against the wall, and all but 3 of them were kicked out of Scotland. That's what that big yellow blob at the top is. And the little red spots around... Yeah,
that's awesome.
The little red blotches around, which kind of a bit like Maggie's pacifier, are the remaining Labour dummies that clung to power.
And what is that a city or something?
Yeah.
Where?
With the little red pacifier.
Oh, it's London. London, obviously.
I meant in Maggie's head.
Yeah, probably. But the bigger red chunks are basically shipbuilding areas, failed industrial areas, a couple of big cities.
Birmingham, Liverpool, places like that.
Yes, sorry.
Shipbuilding.
Anyway, the reason is conservatism actually worked when it was tried, in spite of the fact that David Cameron was shackled to a bunch of leftist morons, or as I call them, commie clowns, called the Liberal...
Maroons?
Yeah,
Maroons,
called the Liberal Democrat Party. He managed to have a functioning government for almost 5 years, which is the maximum period allowed. And when he called the election, the voters rewarded him by freeing him from the shackle to the communist clowns and giving him an absolute majority.
And I think that there's some significance, because I think that there is some symmetry between the UK election just this week and the November election here. And that is, in both instances, the left really made a focus of their energies. Their primary focus had been income inequality. That was the driving force for the Democratic Party in last year's elections, going into the November elections, and that's what the Labour Party made as their banner argument for electing Labour.
They put up their fairly youthful leader, Ed Miliband, with his big eyebrows, and he made, as you say, income inequality his big thing. Essentially, he was the anti-Blair. Tony Blair, a bit like Bill Clinton.
But he had big eyebrows too.
Yeah, dragged the party to the middle, and as a result, they held on to power for a while, even if they were creeping socialists. And the Liberal Democrats, who were real socialists, splintered off and actually won some seats. With Ed Miliband, the party lurched to the left, made the Liberal Democrats irrelevant, basically, and then proceeded to lose anyway because people didn't want what they were selling.
Absolutely, and I think
a maroon.
but I'll tell you this much: I think it's a positive sign for an economy and for a society when they reject the income inequality argument of using the government's coercive power to try to flatten outcomes, because it basically means that people still have aspirations and optimism that they're going to see a better day, and that opportunity exists for them. So I think it's actually a positive sign for our economy. It's a positive sign that people are optimistic about their economic futures, that they don't want to limit other people's ability to do well. Their focus is more or less how do I get more opportunity? And I think we saw that in November here, and I think we saw it just this past week in the UK. And moreover, it'll be interesting to see if David Cameron's able to really do a lot more of the initiatives that he's been focusing on, as far as shrinking governments, getting the size of the government under control, really sort of engaging in some reforms that have been long overdue in their system, in terms of getting their welfare system under control. Which, if you think the welfare system in the U.S.
Looking at? Okay.
Just a minute, let me.
If you think the welfare system in the U.S. is overly generous, you've got nothing on the UK's welfare system, and the Conservatives are looking to reform that. I think this is a good sign for where the Conservative leaders can actually get engaged in a process. And I mean, it's still a much more liberal culture. They truly have national health care, a much more generous welfare state, But people are rebelling against that.
There's a tired but happy David Cameron at the door of number 10 yesterday morning with his wife. And so it was a pretty exciting thing. All of the pollsters and all of the pundits said that it was going to be a close election, a hung parliament. He'd have to form a coalition, if indeed he got to form a coalition at all, and it wasn't Ed Miliband who was forming a coalition with the Scottish Nationalists or something. It just didn't happen. The exit polls started to show that the Conservatives might actually win. Then they started to show that the Conservatives might actually have a majority. It turned out the Conservatives have a majority by at least 6 over the line, right. Which is not bad. And if they align with one of the teeny-weeny parties, they're still going to have a majority they can work with for the 5-year period.
It does remind me of the Monty Python skit about the silly party and a very silly party, but they do have some of that in the UK.
You need to know a little something else about UK politics too, because you do have really silly politicians occasionally. For many, many years, we had this guy called Screaming Lord Such, who represented the Raving Loony Party. Now, but what you need to know is this. In Britain, it's not so much that you have to collect a petition with thousands and thousands of signatures on it to get your name on the ballot. You simply have to show up and put your name down. But you also have to put money down. And if you don't attract enough votes, I think it's 2%, it's a pretty low bar, you lose your deposit. And in this election, many, many of the Liberal Democrats, remember the ones that are further left than the Labour Party, lost their deposits. Hundreds of them. It was a wipeout. Wipeout.
So I think that's a good sign for where we are. I mean, I think that it's going to be another message to the folks at the UN who are looking at. I mean, the UN basically at this point has become a socialist income redistribution operation to try to get rich countries to try to give more money to poor countries. And because there are more poor countries than rich countries, they can always outvote the rich countries. And I think that's an important lesson for them, that there's just not going to be countries that are going to be continuing to write checks to try to subsidize via the UN all these crazy socialist schemes. And I think that this has a lot of weight in terms of international politics. Obviously, Cameron's been pretty aggressive in opposing a lot of the terroristic things that are going on in terms of ISIS and things like that.
Well, in fact, he's looked like a world leader, especially in comparison to Obama. I know that's a pretty low bar to clear, but again, he's the guy that's looked like a strong man, who's made definitive statements, who's been the Americans' ally whenever needed as well, a bit like Blair was, but the thing is, he actually looks like he's
and now
serious.
he's actually got a little more horsepower to start to increase his profile to try to get to where Merkel is in Germany, and I think that's an interesting dynamic because European politics. There's still a little bit element of the great powers in there, and when the German and the German and the British leaders are leading the way, I think that's historically a sign of the fact that they're going to be a little more engaged in the world stage.
Well, and the British and the Germans have something in common. Neither of them particularly wants to pay for the ne'er-do-wells in the southern tier, which means Greece and possibly Spain and
Absolutely,
Italy.
and I think this has significant implications in terms of, like you said, in terms of what the implications in the EU are for Greece, for Spain. I mean, the Brits were smart by not jumping on the euro, and I think that the Germans are still ruining that decision on their part. But from the perspective of what it means as far as these bailouts for these countries, they're going to have to find a way to get in line because if you're Greece, you need to know that now they have a new tax on cash withdrawals, so you can't actually, if you take money out of, so not only do you have to pay money when you get money, now you have to you get money from your employer. Now you have to pay money to the government when you take money out of the bank.
Well, just keep people from putting money in the bank.
Thanks to the zero or less interest rate policies of central banks around the world, and it seems to be a moving conspiracy, meaning that the Fed has more or less slimmed down its printing of dollars for the moment, but the Japanese are still going full tilt, and Mario Draghi at the European Central Bank is going full tilt now, basically as a compliment to we're doing.
Draghi can't ignore what happened in the UK. He can't ignore it.
No, he can't. That's a key point. But what you're saying about cash penalty on withdrawals,
right?
The central banks don't want people to hold a lot of cash because they're trying to devalue it. They want everything to be electronic, so it's under their control.
Right.
And banks have started to charge you for parking cash, even if it's cash they can reuse, recycle, and loan out, the way they used to charge to store your gold. And to make matters worse, some of the big pension funds, especially in Switzerland, said, you know what, if you're going to charge me to keep my money, I'm going to take my money out. And they said, oh, no, you can't do that. What do you mean I can't take my money out of the bank? They actually
bank is like a prison now.
They imposed penalties on their best customers for withdrawing cash.
Well, and that was an important issue. Another big issue that sort of under the radar based upon a lot of the other things that went along is, I don't know if you were aware of this, but this week Congress actually passed a budget, and you'd say, what's the big deal, right? Well, that's the first time that's happened in 7 years.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about that. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Rock Talk.